That's my handwriting. Homeless man's note shocks doctor, then his past changes. Everything. What would you do if you discovered that the homeless person you just helped might be more extraordinary than you ever imagined? Today's story will completely change how you see the people around you. David Chen has been living in Times Square subway station for over 2 years with no memory of his past. But when he writes a simple note to return a lost wallet, it sets off a chain of events that will reveal shocking truths about his identity and put the lives of everyone he's come to love in danger. This is a story about lost memories, chosen families, and the incredible power of human kindness. It's about a man who had to lose everything to find what truly mattered. Before we dive into David's extraordinary journey, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if you believe everyone deserves a second chance. And let me know in the comments, have you ever had a moment that completely changed your perspective on someone? Now let's begin this incredible story of redemption, love, and the families we choose. The fluorescent lights of Times Square subway station buzz like dying insects, casting harsh shadows across the cracked concrete at 5:47 a.m. David Chen folded his cardboard mattress with the precision of someone who had performed this ritual 847 times before. Each morning began the same way, a whispered greeting to the city that had become both his home and his prison. Good morning, New York. His voice echoed off the tiled walls, joining the symphony of early morning sounds, the distant rumble of approaching trains, the squeak of turnstiles, the shuffle of the first commuters beginning their descent into the underground labyrinth. David walked to the water fountain, its metal surface clouded with age and wear. The reflection that stared back at him was a stranger. Weathered face, salt and pepper beard, eyes that held depths of knowledge he couldn't access. Sometimes looking at himself felt like staring at a painting where half the image had been scraped away. From his coat pocket, he retrieved yesterday's discovery, a brown leather wallet, expensive, but worn, dropped near the MetroCard vending machines during the evening rush. He'd spent the night examining its contents by the dim glow of the emergency lighting. The owner was Dr. James Martinez, according to his medical license. 43 years old, works at Mount Sinai. The wallet contained 200 in cash credit cards and something that made David's chest tighten. A prescription bottle for sertraline, half empty, alongside a crumpled appointment card for a therapist. But it was the family photo that had kept David awake. A man who looked tired despite his smile, standing next to a woman and two young children at what appeared to be a birthday party. The woman's hand rested on the man's shoulder, but there was a distance in her posture, a formality that spoke of relationships held together by routine rather than joy. David had seen that look before. He was certain of it, though he couldn't remember where. He pulled out a piece of paper, clean notebook paper he had found discarded near the university bookstore, and began to write in his careful, measured handwriting. Dr. Martinez, you don't know me, but I found your wallet. The cash and cards are all here. I noticed your prescription and wanted you to know that what you're feeling, the weight that seems to press down on your shoulders, even when you're surrounded by people who love you, it's not permanent. Depression lies to us about our worth, about our future, about the impact we have on others. But the truth is in that photo you carry. Those children look at you like you hung the moon, and that means you're doing something right, even when it doesn't feel like it. The medication helps, but so does remembering that healing isn't linear. Some days will be harder than others, and that's not a failure. That's just being human. Take care of yourself, doctor. The world needs healers, especially ones who understand what it means to need healing. A friend. David folded the note carefully and placed it in the wallet. He had learned that small kindnesses could ripple outward in ways you never expected, and Dr. Martinez looked like a man who needed to be reminded that someone was paying attention. Officer Martinez, no relation to the wallet's owner, just one of those New York coincidences, was setting up her morning station near the information booth. She'd been kind to David over the past 2 years, never hassling him, sometimes bringing him coffee on the coldest mornings. Morning, David, she said, looking up from her paperwork. You're up early today. Found this yesterday evening, David said, placing the wallet on her counter. Thought someone might be looking for it. Officer Martinez opened the wallet, her eyebrows rising as she saw the cash. You could have just kept this, you know. Hell, most people would have at least taken the money. Wouldn't feel right, David said simply. Man's got children. Probably worried sick. As Martinez logged the wallet into the lost and found system, David felt that familiar tug in his mind, like trying to remember a melody from a half-forgotten song. There was something about the act of helping that felt automatic, instinctual, as if his hands remembered how to heal even when his mind had forgotten everything else. I put a note in there, David added. Hope that's okay. A note, just letting him know someone was thinking about him. Officer Martinez studied David's face. In 2 years of morning conversations, she'd learned to read the subtle expressions that crossed his weathered features. This morning, something was different. There was a purposefulness in his manner that hadn't been there before. You're a good man, David Chen, she said. Don't let anyone tell you different. The morning rush was beginning. Commuters poured down the stairs like water through a funnel, their faces buried in phones, minds already at their desks in glass towers that scraped the sky. David had learned to read the city's rhythms, to see the patterns in the chaos. He made his way to his usual spot near the downtown platform, where a broken tile created a small alcove. The space offered some shelter from the constant foot traffic, and the acoustics were good. Sometimes tourists dropped change when street musicians played nearby. That's when he saw her. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, sat alone on the bench with a backpack clutched against her chest like armor. She wore a private school uniform, navy blazer with a crest plaid skirt, polished Mary Jane shoes, but tears streaked down her brown cheeks. Every few seconds she'd glance at her phone, then at the turnstiles, clearly waiting for someone who was running late. David felt that tug again, stronger this time. Without conscious thought, he reached into his other pocket and pulled out half a sandwich from yesterday's meal at St. Francis, peanut butter and jelly, carefully wrapped in clean napkins. He approached slowly, the way you might approach a wounded bird. Hey there, he said softly, settling onto the far end of the bench. You waiting for someone? The girl looked up, startled. Her dark eyes were red-rimmed from crying, but there was intelligence there and a wariness that seemed too old for her young face. My mom, she whispered. She's supposed to pick me up, but her meeting ran late again. David nodded. He understood more than she knew about waiting for people who might not come. You hungry? He asked, offering the wrapped sandwich. I've got this, but I can't finish it all. Hate to see good food go to waste. The little girl stared at the sandwich, then at David's face. Despite his appearance, there was something in his manner, a gentleness, a genuine concern, that must have reassured her because she nodded slowly. I'm Lily, she said, accepting the food with small, careful hands. Nice to meet you, Lily. I'm David. He smiled, and for just a moment, the harsh fluorescent lights seemed warmer. Tell me, what's your favorite subject in school? As Lily began to eat and talk about her art class, David felt something shift inside him. For the first time in 847 days, he felt genuinely useful. Not just surviving, but actually needed by another human being. I'm painting a purple elephant, Lily said, some of her shyness fading. My teacher says elephants aren't purple, but I think they should be. Purple is the color of dreams, and elephants never forget their dreams. That's beautiful, David said. What else do you know about elephants? They have families that stick together no matter what, and when one elephant is hurt, the whole herd helps take care of it. David felt something crack open in his chest, not painful but profound, like ice breaking up in spring. That sounds like a good way to live. Do you have a family, David? The question hung in the air. David was quiet for a long moment, staring at his hands. I don't remember, he said finally. I had an accident a while back and now I can't remember much from before. But I like to think that if I did have a family, they were like your elephants. Lily studied his face with the directness only children possess. Maybe we could be your elephant family, just for today. No, before David could respond, the sharp click of heels on concrete announced someone's rapid approach. A woman in an expensive business suit was hurrying toward them, her phone pressed to her ear, scanning the platform with increasing desperation. Yes, I know I'm late, she was saying. The Peterson merger is falling apart, and I couldn't leave until... She stopped mid-sentence as she spotted her daughter sharing food with a homeless man. Every protective instinct in Sofia Martinez's body screamed at once. Lily, both Lily and David looked up. The little girl's face immediately shifted from contentment to guilt, while David simply stood and took a respectful step back. Mom, This is David. He shared a sandwich with me because I was crying and get your things now. Sophia's voice was controlled but firm. She moved between her daughter and David, her designer handbag clutched like a shield. David raised his hand slightly, a gesture of peace. Ma'am, she was upset. I just thought she might be hungry while she waited. Sophia studied his face. Despite his rough appearance, his voice was educated, measured. There was something about his posture that didn't match what she'd expected. He stood with the bearing of someone accustomed to being listened to, respected. But she was a successful attorney because she trusted her instincts, and right now those instincts said to get her daughter away from here. Thank you for your concern, she said stiffly, taking Lily's hand. But we're fine. As they walked toward the exit, Lily looked back over her shoulder. Bye, David. Thank you for being my elephant family today. David waved, then sat back down on the bench. He watched them disappear up the stairs, feeling strangely empty. For a few minutes, he'd felt like himself, whoever that was supposed to be. But as the platform filled with the morning rush, David Chen remained invisible, once again, just another ghost in the city's vast machine. What he didn't know was that 4 hours later, Dr. James Martinez would stand in the police station holding his wallet, staring at a handwritten note with tears in his eyes. That's my handwriting, Dr. Martinez would whisper to Officer Martinez, his voice barely audible above the station's noise. I mean, it's not my handwriting, but it's exactly how I write. The letter formation, the spacing, even the way the words flow together. He'd look up at the officer with confusion and something that might have been hope. Who found this? Meanwhile, in her corner office, 30 floors above the city, Sophia Martinez couldn't concentrate on the Peterson merger. Every time she tried to focus on the contract details, she saw David's face, the gentleness in his eyes when he'd spoken to Lily, the careful way he'd offered the sandwich, as if sharing food were a sacred act. And she kept thinking about something Lily had said in the elevator. He knew exactly what to say to make me feel better, Mommy, just like you do when I have nightmares. That evening, as Sophia tucked Lily into bed, her daughter made a request that would change everything. Can we go see David tomorrow? I want to bring him a sandwich this time. Sophia's first instinct was to say no, but looking at her daughter's face, more animated than it had been in months, she found herself nodding. We'll see, baby. We'll see. As Lily drifted off to sleep, Sophia stood at her bedroom window looking out at the city lights. Somewhere down there in the tunnels beneath the streets, a man named David was probably settling down for another night on cardboard. A man who had somehow known exactly what her daughter needed to hear. A man whose handwriting, according to Martinez's frantic calls to her office that afternoon, matched that of a missing psychiatrist who'd specialized in trauma and memory loss. Sophia pulled out her phone and scrolled through her contacts until she found the name she was looking for, Detective Ray Morrison, NYPD Missing Persons. She hesitated for a long moment, finger hovering over the call button. Then she thought about David's eyes, kind, intelligent, haunted, and the way Lily had smiled for the first time in weeks. Some mysteries Sophia decided were worth solving. The phone rang once before Detective Morrison picked up. Sophia? It's been a while. What can I do for you? Ray, I need you to run a check on someone. A homeless man named David Chen. I think he might be someone we've been looking for. 3 miles downtown, David Chen lay on his cardboard bed staring up at the tunnel ceiling. Tonight his dreams would be different. Instead of the usual fragments, flashes of white coats, the sound of crying hands that reached for help, he couldn't remember how to give. He would dream of a little girl who believed in purple elephants and families that stick together no matter what. He would dream of belonging somewhere. And in the morning when he woke up to begin day 848 of his new life, he would have no idea that his old life was about to come looking for him. Some doors once opened can never be closed again. Some families find you when you least expect it. And sometimes the person you're meant to become is hiding inside the person you've forgotten you used to be. Detective Ray Morrison had seen enough missing persons cases to know that hope was a dangerous thing. It could keep families searching long after logic said to let go, and it could blind investigators to uncomfortable truths. But as he sat in his cluttered office at 8:47 a.m., staring at the file Sophia Martinez had overnighted to him, hope was exactly what he felt. The file contained 3 items: a photograph of David Chen taken surreptitiously on Sophia's phone, a copy of the handwritten note found in Dr. Martinez's wallet, and a 2-year-old missing persons report for Dr. David Michael Chen, age 43, last seen leaving Mount Sinai Hospital after his final shift as Chief of Psychiatric Services. Ray picked up the magnifying glass from his desk drawer and studied the handwriting sample. In 23 years of police work, he'd learned to spot forgeries, coach testimonies, and elaborate deceptions. But this wasn't any of those things. This was something much stranger. The handwriting was identical. Not similar, identical. Same pressure patterns, same letter formations, same unconscious spacing habits that graphologists called personal signature markers. Either someone had spent months perfecting an exact imitation of Dr. Chen's handwriting, or, "Morrison, you got a minute?" Ray looked up to see Detective Lisa Park standing in his doorway, holding a coffee cup and wearing the expression she reserved for cases that kept her up at night. "What's eating you, Hark? Remember that psychiatrist who went missing 2 years ago? The one who crashed his car, but his body was never found?" Ray felt his pulse quicken. "Dr. David Chen, what about him? I've been reviewing cold cases trying to see if we missed anything. Look at this." She placed a manila folder on his desk. Chen's medical records from after the accident. He was brought to Bellevue with severe head trauma, unconscious for 6 days. When he woke up, he had complete retrograde amnesia. Couldn't remember his name, his profession, anything about his life before the accident. But he was discharged to family, right? I remember reading that in the file. That's what I thought too. But look closer. Park opened the folder, pointing to a specific page. He was discharged to next of kin, listed as Anna Chen wife. But here's the thing, I called Anna Chen yesterday. She's remarried, lives in California now. She told me David never came home from the hospital. She assumed he'd died and the body was never found. Ray felt ice forming in his stomach. So who picked him up from the hospital? That's what I've been trying to figure out. The discharge papers show a signature, but the name is illegible. And here's the really strange part. The hospital's security footage from that day is missing. Not corrupted, not damaged. Missing. Ray spread the contents of both files across his desk, pieces of a puzzle that was starting to form a picture he didn't like. Someone wanted Dr. David Chen to disappear. Gets worse. I pulled his financial records. Someone's been accessing his accounts regularly for the past 2 years. Small withdrawals, always from different ATMs around the city. Just enough to keep the accounts active so they wouldn't be flagged as abandoned. Someone who knows he's alive. Someone who wants him to stay missing. Ray picked up his phone and dialed Sophia's number. She answered on the second ring. "Ray, did you find something?" "Sophia, I need you to listen to me very carefully. The man you've been interacting with, David, he might be in danger. I'm going to send a unit to the subway station, but I need you to stay away from there until we know more." "What kind of danger, Ray? What did you find?" "The kind of danger that comes from someone who's been missing for 2 years when certain people wanted him to stay that way. I'll call you when I know more." Ray hung up and turned to Park. "Get me everything you can on Dr. Chen's last case files. If someone wanted him gone, it started with something he was working on." Meanwhile, 3 levels underground, David Chen was having the strangest morning of his recent memory. It started when Dr. James Martinez appeared at the top of the subway stairs at 7:15 a.m., scanning the platform until his eyes found David sitting in his usual spot. The doctor was still in scrubs, as if he'd come straight from an overnight shift, and he was carrying David's note in his hand like a talisman. "Excuse me, Nyang," Dr. Martinez said, approaching cautiously. "Are you David?" "I am. Is everything okay?" Dr. Martinez sat down heavily on the bench and looking exhausted. "This note. You wrote this note." "Yes, sir. I hope that was all right. I just thought, where did you go to medical school?" The question hung in the air like smoke. David felt that familiar tugging sensation in his mind, stronger now than it had ever been. I don't know what you mean." "This note, it's not just kind, it's clinically informed. You reference the nonlinear nature of healing, the way depression distorts cognitive patterns. These aren't things you'd know unless you'd studied them." David stared at his hands. "Sometimes I say things and I don't know where they come from, like remembering how to ride a bicycle but not remembering when I learned." "What else do you remember about medicine, I mean?" I David closed his eyes, trying to catch the fragments that always seemed to slip away. I know that grief moves through people in waves, not stages. I know that trauma lives in the body, not just the mind. I know that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is simply witness their pain without trying to fix it. Dr. Martinez was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper. My God, you really don't remember, do you? Remember what? Before Dr. Martinez could answer, the sound of footsteps echoed across the platform. Multiple sets of footsteps moving with purpose. David looked up to see three people approaching, two police officers and a woman in a business suit who looked like she meant business. David Chen, one of the officers, called out, Yes? We're going to need you to come with us. You're not in trouble, but we have some questions about your identity. David felt the world tilt slightly. My identity. Dr. Martinez stood up, and his expression shifting to protective concern. Officers, this man needs medical attention, not interrogation. If he's who I think he is. And who do you think he is, doctor? Martinez looked at David, then at the officers. I think he's Dr. David Chen, one of the most respected psychiatrists in New York City. And I think someone has been keeping him from remembering who he is. As the words settled over the platform like a heavy blanket, David felt something crack open in his mind. Not a flood of memories, just a single crystal-clear image, a woman crying in an office with diplomas on the wall, and his own voice saying, It's going to be okay. We're going to figure this out together. I helped people. He whispered more to himself than anyone else. You helped a lot of people, Martinez confirmed, including me, 3 years ago when I was going through my divorce and struggling with depression. You were my therapist. That handwriting I recognized, it's from notes you used to write in my file. The same careful, thoughtful observations. The same way of seeing straight to the heart of what someone needed to hear. The platform was spinning now. David grabbed the edge of the bench to steady himself. If I was a doctor, why am I here? Why don't I remember? That's what we're going to find out, said the woman in the business suit. I'm Detective Park, NYPD. Mr. Chen, we have reason to believe someone deliberately prevented you from returning home after your accident. We'd like to help you figure out who and why. David looked around the platform, his home for 847 days, and felt a profound sense of loss. Not for the life he couldn't remember, but for the simplicity he was about to lose. What if I don't want to remember? He asked quietly. Why wouldn't you want to remember? Detective Park asked gently. Because, David said, his voice barely audible above the rumble of an approaching train. What if the person I was before is someone I don't want to be again? 3 hours later, Sofia Martinez sat in her office trying to focus on depositions for the Peterson case, but her mind kept wandering to a homeless man who might not be homeless at all. Her assistant Jennifer knocked on the door and entered without waiting for permission. A liberty that usually annoyed Sofia, but today felt oddly comforting. Your ex-husband is here, Jennifer said, her tone suggesting she'd rather announce a plague outbreak. Richard, he doesn't have an appointment. He says it's about Lily and it's urgent. Sofia sighed and saved her work. Richard Martinez had impeccable timing. He always appeared when she was already dealing with something complicated, as if he had radar for her vulnerable moments. Richard entered her office with the confident stride of a man accustomed to getting what he wanted. At 40, he was still handsome in a Madison Avenue sort of way, with silver threading through his dark hair and the kind of smile that had once made her believe in forever. Sofia, you look tired. Hello, Richard. What's so urgent that it couldn't wait for our scheduled call tomorrow? I heard about your new friend. Sofia's blood went cold. I beg your pardon. The homeless man. David, is it? The one our daughter has been spending time with at the subway station. How could you possibly know about that? Richard settled into the chair across from her desk with the satisfaction of someone holding all the cards. I have a responsibility to monitor Lily's welfare, especially given our custody arrangement. Having her interact with unstable individuals doesn't reflect well on your judgment as a parent. Are you having me followed? I'm protecting our daughter. There's a difference. Sofia stood up, fury rising in her chest, an eye in her chest like a tide. Richard, if you're having me or Lily surveilled, I'll file an injunction so fast it'll make your head spin. Relax, Sofia. I'm not having you surveilled. I'm having him surveilled. The words hit her like a physical blow. What? David Chen, or should I say Dr. David Chen? Yes, I know who he really is. The question is, do you? Sophia's mouth went dry. What are you talking about? Richard pulled out a manila folder and placed it on her desk. Dr. David Michael Chen, age 45, former chief of psychiatric services at Mount Sinai. Reported missing 2 years ago after a car accident. Presumed dead until recently. Sophia opened the folder with trembling hands. Inside were professional photographs of David, cleaned up in a suit, standing next to awards and certificates. The same gentle eyes, the same careful posture, but transformed by context into someone she barely recognized. He was your therapist, Sophia. What? 3 years ago when you were deciding whether to leave me. Dr. David Chen was the psychiatrist you were seeing, the one who helped you build up the courage to file for divorce, the one who convinced you that you deserved better than what I was offering. The room was spinning. Sophia gripped the edge of her desk, trying to process what Richard was telling her. That's impossible. I would have recognized him. Would you look at these photos? Now imagine him with 2 years of living on the streets, 30 pounds lighter, weathered by exposure. The mind sees what it expects to see, Sophia. You expected to see a homeless man, so that's what you saw. Sophia stared at the photographs, her mind racing backward through memories. The way David had spoken to Lily with such insight. His immediate understanding of complex emotional situations. The gentle, professional manner that had seemed so incongruous with his circumstances. Even if this is true, she said slowly, it doesn't change anything. David helped Lily. He's been nothing but kind to both of us. Has he been manipulating you? Think about it. Sophia, what are the odds that you would randomly encounter the very therapist who broke up our marriage? The one man who knew exactly which emotional buttons to push. You're suggesting he planned this somehow, that he's been living on the streets for 2 years just to manipulate me. I'm suggesting that there's more to this story than you know. And until we know what it is, I don't want our daughter anywhere near him. Richard stood up, straightening his tie with the precision of a man who never left anything to chance. I've filed a motion for emergency custody review. Given the circumstances, your poor judgment in exposing Lily to a potentially dangerous individual with unclear motives. I think any reasonable judge will agree that Lily should stay with me until this situation is resolved. Richard, you can't. I already have. The hearing is tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. I suggest you get yourself a good attorney, Sophia. You're going to need one. As the door closed behind him, Sophia collapsed into her chair, staring at the photographs of David Chen, the man who had shared his sandwich with her daughter, the man who had written a note that moved Dr. Martinez to tears, the man who had somehow been her therapist 3 years ago and was now homeless with no memory of their previous relationship. Her phone buzzed with a text from Detective Morrison. Need to meet. Important developments. Can you come to the precinct? Sophia grabbed her coat in the manila folder. If she was going to fight for her daughter, and possibly for David, she needed to understand exactly what she was fighting against. And more importantly, she needed to understand who David Chen really was and why someone had wanted him to disappear. Because as she looked at the photos one more time, she realized Richard was right about one thing. The odds of her randomly encountering David were astronomical, which meant their meeting hadn't been random at all. The question was whether David knew that or if he was as much a victim in this as she was beginning to suspect. The precinct conference room smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. Sophia sat across from Detective Morrison and Detective Park, the manila folder Richard had given her, spread open between them like evidence in a trial where she wasn't sure who was on trial. Mrs. Martinez, Detective Morrison began, we need to ask you about your relationship with Dr. David Chen 3 years ago. He was my therapist. I saw him for about 6 months during my divorce proceedings. He helped me work through some difficult decisions. What kind of decisions? Sophia felt heat rise in her cheeks. Whether to leave my husband. Richard was controlling. David helped me understand that I deserved better, that Lily deserved to see what a healthy relationship looked like. Detective Park leaned forward. Did Dr. Chen ever suggest specific actions? Recommend certain lawyers, perhaps give you advice that went beyond standard therapeutic boundaries? No, nothing like that. He just listened and asked the right questions. He helped me find my own answers. Mrs. Martinez, Morrison said gently, we've been investigating Dr. Chen's disappearance, and we've uncovered some disturbing information. We believe he was targeted because of his work with high-profile divorce cases. What do you mean targeted? Park opened another folder. Dr. Chen specialized in what's called therapeutic jurisprudence, helping people navigate the emotional aspects of legal proceedings. He was often called as an expert witness in custody cases. His testimony was influential. Influential how? In the past 5 years, every custody case where Dr. Chen testified resulted in the primary custody going to his former patient. His professional opinion carried enormous weight with judges. Sophia felt ice forming in her stomach. Are you suggesting he was biased? We're suggesting someone thought he was too effective. Look at this. Morrison pulled out a sheet of paper covered in financial transactions. These are payments made to a private security firm called Blackstone Consulting. The payments started 3 years ago and continued until Dr. Chen's accident. Who was paying them? That's what we're trying to figure out. The account is registered to a shell company, but we've traced some of the funding. Mrs. Martinez, your ex-husband's law firm, has made significant payments to the same shell company. The room felt like it was tilting. You think Richard had something to do with David's disappearance? We think your ex-husband, or someone connected to him, hired people to neutralize Dr. Chen's influence on high-stakes custody cases. The car accident may not have been an accident at all. Before Sophia could respond, Morrison's phone rang. He answered it, listened for a moment, then hung up with a grim expression. That was the hospital. Dr. Chen is starting to remember. And he's asking for you, Mrs. Martinez. The drive to Mount Sinai felt like moving through a dream. Sophia's hands gripped the steering wheel as Detective Park's words echoed in her mind. Be careful what you say to him. If someone went to this much trouble to erase his memory, they might not want him getting it back. She found David in a private room on the 7th floor, sitting by the window in a hospital gown that made him look younger and more vulnerable than she'd ever seen him. Dr. Martinez sat in a nearby chair, taking notes on a legal pad. Sophia. David's face lit up when he saw her, then clouded with confusion. I remember you, not from the subway, from before. You used to sit in the blue chair in my office. You were afraid of something. I was afraid of leaving my husband, Sophia said softly, settling into the visitor's chair. You helped me find the courage to do it. You brought Lily to one of our sessions. She drew me a picture of a purple elephant. She said it was the color of brave choices. Sophia felt tears welling up. She still draws purple elephants. She says they're the color of memories now. The memories are coming back in pieces, Dr. Martinez explained. Some recent, some distant. It's like his mind is rebuilding itself chronologically backwards. David rubbed his temples, wincing. I remember the accident now. I was driving home from the hospital. It was raining. A black SUV ran a red light and hit my car head-on. But here's the thing. I remember looking in my rearview mirror just before impact. The SUV had been following me for blocks. David, Sophia said carefully, do you remember anything about your last few weeks before the accident? Any threats? Unusual interactions? Patients who seemed angry? I remember being worried about someone, a case I was working on, high-profile custody battle. The husband was... David's face went pale. Oh God, Richard Martinez, your ex-husband. He threatened me. The room went silent except for the hum of medical equipment. What kind of threat? Dr. Martinez asked. He came to my office the day before the accident, said I was ruining his life, destroying his family. He said if I testified in the custody hearing, he'd make sure I regretted it. David looked at Sophia with dawning horror. He knew about our therapeutic relationship. He said I was biased, that I'd manipulated you into leaving him. David, I need you to remember something else, Sophia said urgently. After your accident, someone picked you up from the hospital. Someone pretending to be family. Do you remember who? David closed his eyes, concentrating. A woman, blonde, professional looking. She said she was Anna, my wife, but something felt wrong. She kept asking me questions about my work, about specific patients. When I couldn't remember anything, she seemed relieved. This woman, did she have an accent? Any distinctive features? She had a scar on her left hand, small crescent-shaped, and she wore a ring with a black stone. When she thought I wasn't looking, she was taking pictures of my medical chart with her phone. Dr. Martinez and Sophia exchanged glances. David, Sophia said gently, your real wife Anna remarried and lives in California. She never picked you up from the hospital. The implications settled over David like a heavy blanket. Someone kidnapped me, kept me confused and disoriented, made sure I couldn't remember who I was or testify in any custody cases. But why let you live? Why not just... Sophia couldn't finish the sentence. Because my death would have triggered an investigation. David said, his professional training reasserting itself. Better to have me disappear into the city's homeless population where I'd never be found or taken seriously if I started remembering. A soft knock interrupted them. Detective Morrison entered with a young woman Sophia didn't recognize. Dr. Chen, this is Special Agent Sarah Kim from the FBI. We've been investigating Blackstone Consulting for several months. They specialize in what they call reputation management for high net worth individuals involved in messy divorces. Agent Kim sat down, her expression serious. Dr. Chen, we believe you were specifically targeted because your testimony was too effective. You were helping abused victims gain custody of their children, and certain powerful people didn't like that. How many others? David asked quietly. You're the third mental health professional who's been targeted. One died in a skiing accident. Another moved to Europe after receiving death threats. You were supposed to be the cautionary tale that kept other therapists from getting involved in high-stakes custody cases. Sophia felt sick. And Richard, is he involved? Your ex-husband hired Blackstone Consulting initially, but we believe they went far beyond what he authorized. He paid for surveillance and intimidation. He didn't pay for attempted murder and kidnapping. How do you know that? Agent Kim smiled grimly. Because he's been cooperating with our investigation for the past 6 months. Once he realized what Blackstone was actually doing, he came to us. The room spun around Sophia. Richard is working with the FBI. Mrs. Martinez, your ex-husband may be controlling and manipulative, but he's not a killer. When he discovered that Dr. Chen had disappeared after their confrontation, he suspected something had gone wrong. That's when he contacted us. Detective Morrison stepped forward. Mrs. Martinez, the reason your ex-husband filed for emergency custody wasn't to take Lily away from you. It was to get all of you into protective custody. Blackstone Consulting is still active, and if they know Dr. Chen is recovering his memory, as if summoned by the mention of danger, the lights in the hallway outside flickered and went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in an eerie red glow. That's not normal, Agent Kim said, reaching for her radio. Hospital security, this is FBI Special Agent Kim. We have a situation on the 7th floor. Static answered her. David stood up, his hospital gown fluttering. We need to get out of here. Now. David, you're not well enough to... Sophia, listen to me. I've been remembering more than just the accident. I've been remembering my training. Before I became a psychiatrist, I was a Marine. If Blackstone is here, they're not coming to talk. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Too many footsteps moving too purposefully for normal hospital traffic. Dr. Martinez moved to the door and peered through the small window. There are at least 6 people in the hallway. They're wearing scrubs, but they're moving like soldiers. Agent Kim was speaking rapidly into her radio, trying different frequencies. No response from backup. They must be jamming communications. David moved to Sophia's side. Is there another way out of here? Service elevator at the end of the hall, Dr. Martinez said, but we'd have to get past them. No, David said, moving to the window. We go down. David, we're 7 floors up. There's a fire escape. I can see it from here. He turned to Agent Kim. How long before your backup realizes something's wrong? They'll check in within 10 minutes, but that might be too long. A soft tap came at the door. Everyone froze. Dr. Chen, a woman's voice called. I'm Nurse Thompson, and I need to check your IV. David looked at the others and shook his head. I don't have an IV. The tapping became more insistent. Doctor, I really need to come in. Agent Kim drew her weapon and motioned for everyone to move away from the door. Dr. Chen, do you recognize the voice? David listened carefully, then his face went white. It's her, the woman who picked me up from the hospital 2 years ago, the one with the scar. The door handle turned slowly. Window now. Agent Kim positioned herself between the door and the others. I'll buy you time. I'm not leaving you, Sophia said. You have a daughter to think about. Go. David was already working on the window latch. Sophia, I need you to trust me. I know this is scary, but I won't let anything happen to you. As the door began to open, Sophia looked into David's eyes and saw not the confused homeless man she'd met at the subway station, but the trained professional who had spent years helping people through impossible situations. Okay, she whispered. I trust you. David smiled, the first truly confident smile she'd seen from him, and opened the window to the fire escape. After you, Mrs. Martinez. As they climbed out into the New York night, the sound of Agent Kim's voice carried through the window. FBI, drop your weapons. Then gunshots and silence. David pulled Sophia close as they crouched on the fire escape platform. I'm going to get you home to Lily, he whispered. I promise. Looking into his eyes, Sophia realized that somewhere between the subway platform and this moment, David Chen had found himself again. Not just his memories, but his strength, his purpose, his capacity to protect the people he cared about. I know you will, she said. And for the first time in 2 years, David Chen, all of David Chen, believed it too. The descent down the fire escape was harrowing. 7 floors above the city with the sound of chaos echoing from the hospital room they'd just escaped, David guided Sophia down the metal steps with steady hands and quiet confidence. Stay low, he whispered. Keep your weight on the outer edges of the steps. They're less likely to make noise. How do you know that? Marine training. Some things you never forget, even when you forget everything else. When they reached the alley behind the hospital, David paused, scanning the shadows. Agent Kim said backup would come. We need to find a place to wait safely. My office is 6 blocks from here. We could... No, they'll expect that. We need somewhere unexpected. David thought for a moment, then smiled. I know exactly where to go. 20 minutes later, they were descending into the familiar fluorescent glow of Times Square subway station. Officer Martinez was ending her shift, and her face showed complete shock when she saw David in a hospital gown accompanied by Sophia Martinez. David, what in the world? Maria, I need your help. We're in danger and I need somewhere safe to make some phone calls. Officer Martinez had known David long enough to read the urgency in his voice. Without questions, she led them to the small security office behind the information booth. Use my phone, she said, locking the door behind them. What's going on? David dialed a number from memory, the first phone number he'd fully remembered. Detective Morrison, it's David Chen. Agent Kim is down. We made it out, but Blackstone found us at the hospital. Morrison's voice was tight with concern. Where are you? Safe for now. What's the status on the emergency custody order? Signed an hour ago, Mrs. Martinez, you and Lily are officially in protective custody. We've got officers picking her up from school right now. Sophia grabbed the phone. Is she safe? She's safe, but we need to get you to a secure location. Where are you? David took the phone back. Detective, I'm going to need you to trust me on this. Don't come to us. Let us come to you. Blackstone has been planning this for too long. They know how law enforcement operates, but they don't know how I operate. Dr. Chen, you're a psychiatrist, not a field agent. I'm a Marine who became a psychiatrist. There's a difference. David hung up and turned to Sophia and Officer Martinez. Here's what we're going to do. For the next hour, David Chen orchestrated a plan with the precision of someone who understood both human psychology and tactical operations. Using Officer Martinez's radio network, he coordinated with transit police throughout the subway system. Using his knowledge of the city's underground tunnels, he mapped out multiple escape routes. And using his psychiatric training, he anticipated how Blackstone would try to track them. They're good at finding people who run in predictable patterns, he explained to Sophia as they waited in the subway office. But I'm not running, I'm hunting. David, this isn't your responsibility. Let the FBI handle it. Sophia, they've had 2 years to handle it. In that time, I lost everything. My career, my identity, my ability to help people. But more importantly, they've been terrorizing families, threatening children, destroying lives. It stops tonight. And if something happens to you... David was quiet for a long moment. Do you remember what you said to me in therapy 3 years ago during our last session? I said a lot of things. You said that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is fight for the people you love, even when you're scared. even when the odds are against you. Sophia felt tears starting. I was talking about leaving Richard, and now I'm talking about protecting you and Lily. It's the same principle. Officer Martinez's radio crackled. All units, we have multiple suspects in custody at Mount Sinai. Agent Kim is stable and conscious, but we're missing the primary target. David smiled grimly. They're looking for the woman with Bada's scar, the one who's been pulling the strings. He turned to Officer Martinez. Maria, I need you to do something that's going to sound crazy. Crazier than hiding a psychiatrist and a lawyer in my subway office. I need you to arrest me. Both women stared at him. David, what are you talking about? Think about it. Where's the one place Blackstone won't look for me in police custody? And where's the one place their inside contact can't reach me in a holding cell? Sophia shook her head. That's insane. You'll be trapped. No, I'll be bait. And when she comes for me, we'll be ready. David's plan was elegant in its simplicity. Officer Martinez would arrest him for trespassing and disturbing the peace, minor charges that would put him in a holding cell at the local precinct. Sophia would be taken to a safe house with Lily, and Detective Morrison would set up surveillance around the precinct, waiting for someone to try to get to David. What makes you so sure she'll come? Sophia asked as they prepared to leave the subway office. Because I'm the only witness who can identify her, and because she's been working for 2 years to keep me silent. She can't risk me testifying now. And if she doesn't come, then we've kept you and Lily safe, and the FBI can continue their investigation. Either way, you're protected. As Officer Martinez prepared to make the arrest, Sophia grabbed David's arm. When this is over, she said, I want you to know something. The man I met at the subway station, the one who shared his sandwich with Lily, that person isn't gone just because you remembered who you used to be. That kindness, that gentleness, that's still you. David smiled, and for a moment she could see both versions of him, the trained professional and the humble man who'd learned to survive on the streets. Thank you, Sophia, for everything, for giving me a reason to remember and a reason to fight. As the handcuffs clicked into place, David Chen closed his eyes and prepared for the final confrontation with the people who had stolen 2 years of his life. But this time he wouldn't be the confused, vulnerable victim they expected. This time he would be ready. The holding cell at the 14th precinct wasn't designed for comfort, but David Chen had spent 2 years sleeping on cardboard in subway tunnels. The narrow bench and thin mattress felt luxurious by comparison. He lay on his back, staring at the ceiling, running through the plan one more time. Detective Morrison had positioned undercover officers throughout the precinct. Agent Kim, despite her injuries, was coordinating from a hospital room, and Sophia and Lily were safe in a federal safe house in Queens. Everything was in place. Now he just had to wait. At 11:47 p.m., his patience was rewarded. Dr. Chen, David opened his eyes to find a woman standing outside his cell. Blonde, professional-looking, wearing a police detective's badge, and on her left hand, a crescent-shaped scar. I'm Detective Sarah Morrison, she said with a pleasant smile. I'm here to transfer you to a more secure facility. Interesting, David said, sitting up slowly. Detective Morrison is a man, and he's about 20 years older than you. The woman's smile faltered slightly. Different Detective Morrison. Common name. David stood up and walked to the bars, studying her face. You know what I remember about you? It's not the scar, though, that's distinctive. It's your eyes. You have the eyes of someone who enjoys other people's pain. Dr. Chen, I'm going to need you to step back from the bars. What I can't figure out is why. Money, obviously. Blackstone pays well. But there's something else. Something personal. The woman's mask dropped completely. Her hand moved to her weapon, but she didn't draw it. Yet. You really don't remember me, do you? She said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Claire Blackstone. I was your patient 5 years ago. David's mind raced backward through fragmented memories. Slowly, pieces began to fall into place. The custody evaluation. You were trying to get your children back from your ex-husband, and you recommended against it. You said I was psychologically unfit for custody. You destroyed my life with your little report. Because you were unfit. You had threatened to kill your children rather than let your ex-husband have them. That's not the behavior of a loving mother. That's the behavior of someone who sees children as possessions. Claire's hand tightened on her weapon. They were my children. They were human beings, and now they're safe because the system worked the way it was supposed to. The system, Claire laughed bitterly. The system that lets arrogant doctors play God with people's lives. Well, I found a way to make the system work for me instead. By terrorizing other families, by destroying other therapists' lives, by making sure that bleeding heart psychiatrists think twice before they ruin someone's life with their professional opinions. David kept his voice calm, therapeutic. Claire, it is not too late to stop this. You can still what, go to therapy? She laughed again, a sound like breaking glass. I tried therapy, remember, with you, and look how that worked out. She pulled out her phone and typed a quick message. My team will be here in 3 minutes. We're going to walk out of here together, nice and quiet, and then you're going to disappear again. Permanently this time. And if I refuse, then I'll pay a visit to that safe house in Queens, Sophia Martinez, apartment 3B right, and her daughter Lily. Such a sweet little girl. It would be a shame if something happened to her because her mother couldn't leave well enough alone. David felt ice flood his veins. You leave them out of this. Then cooperate. You've caused me enough trouble for one lifetime. The sound of footsteps echoed down the corridor, multiple sets moving with military precision. Claire smiled, right on time. But as the footsteps grew closer, David heard something that made him smile in return, the distinctive click, click of handcuffs and Detective Morrison's voice saying, "You're under arrest." Claire spun around to see her entire team being led down the corridor in restraints. Detective Morrison appeared around the corner, followed by Agent Kim, pale but determined, and 6 FBI agents. Ms. Blackstone, Agent Kim said, you're under arrest for kidnapping, attempted murder, and racketeering. You have the right to remain silent. Claire's face twisted with rage. This isn't over. Even if you arrest me, there are others. The demand for our services is too high. Someone else will take over. Maybe, David said quietly, but at least you won't be hurting anyone else. As they led Claire away, she turned back to David one last time. You still don't understand, do you? People like Richard Martinez, they create people like me. As long as there are messy divorces and custody battles, there will be someone willing to do what needs to be done. You're wrong, David said. People like Richard Martinez learn to do better. People like you just get arrested. After Claire and her team were processed, David found himself in Detective Morrison's office, finally out of the hospital gown and wearing borrowed clothes that actually fit. Agent Kim, despite doctor's orders, had insisted on debriefing him personally. Dr. Chen, I want you to know that your cooperation tonight led to the arrests of 12 people in 4 states. Blackstone Consulting is finished. What about their clients? The people who hired them? Most of them, like your ex-husband, Richard Martinez, had no idea how far Blackstone was willing to go. They thought they were hiring people to dig up dirt or intimidate witnesses, not commit kidnapping and attempted murder. We'll be filing charges where appropriate, but many of them will be cooperating witnesses rather than defendants. David nodded. And the families, the other therapists who were threatened. Safe. We've been working this case for months, Dr. Chen. Your disappearance was just the final piece of evidence we needed to bring them down. Detective Morrison leaned back in his chair. So what now, Doc? Your old job is waiting for you at Mount Sinai. Your apartment has been maintained by the hospital's insurance company. You can go back to your old life whenever you're ready. David was quiet for a long moment. What if I don't want my old life back? What do you mean? I mean the person I was before the accident. He was good at his job, but he was also isolated. Lonely. He lived for his work because he didn't have anything else. These past few days with Sophia and Lily, I've remembered what it feels like to be part of a family. Agent Kim smiled. Dr. Chen, nothing says you can't have both. You can go back to helping people professionally and still have a personal life. Is that what you think I should do? I think, Detective Morrison said, that you should ask the 2 people who matter most what they think. The safe house in Queens was a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a building indistinguishable from dozens of others on the block. When David knocked on the door at 6:30 a.m., he was surprised to hear footsteps running toward him. The door opened to reveal Lily Martinez in purple pajamas, her eyes bright with excitement. "David, Mommy said you were catching bad guys." "We caught them," David confirmed, and kneeling down to her level. "Everyone's safe now." Lily threw her arms around his neck in a hug that nearly knocked him over. "I was scared you wouldn't come back." "I promised I would, didn't I?" Sophia appeared in the doorway wearing a bathrobe and the expression of someone who hadn't slept all night. When she saw David, whole safe himself again, her composure finally broke. "I thought I'd lost you," she whispered, pulling him into an embrace that felt like coming home. "You didn't lose me," David said softly. "You found me. Both of you found me when I didn't even know I was lost." They sat around the small kitchen table sharing coffee and pancakes while Lily drew pictures of their adventure. David told them about Claire Blackstone, about the arrests, about the end of the threat that had hung over all of them. "So what happens now?" Sophia asked. "Well, the FBI wants me to testify in the trials. Mount Sinai wants me to come back to work. My old life is waiting for me exactly as I left it." "That sounds wonderful." "It would be, except for one thing." "What's that?" David reached across the table and took her hand. "My old life didn't have you in it, and I can't imagine going back to a life without you and Lily." Sophia felt tears starting again. "David, you don't have to choose between your career and us. You can have both." "I know, but I want to be sure you want both too. I want to be sure you want David Chen, the psychiatrist, not just David, the man you rescued from the subway." Lily looked up from her drawing. "Can I see your picture, David?" "What picture, sweetheart?" "The one you drew. When I was little, Mommy said grown-ups don't draw pictures. But you're a grown-up, and you helped me with mine, so you must have pictures too." David smiled, understanding her logic. "I don't draw pictures like you do, Lily, but I help people draw pictures in their routine. Pictures of how they want their lives to look." "What does your picture look like?" David looked at Sophia, then at Lily, then around the small apartment that had become a refuge for all of them. "It looks like this," he said simply. "It looks like a family that chooses each other every day. It looks like purple elephants and shared sandwiches and someone to come home to who's happy to see you." "That sounds like a good picture," Lily said solemnly. "What about you, Sophia? What does your picture look like?" Sophia studied his face, the same kind eyes that had comforted her daughter in the subway, but now filled with the confidence and strength of someone who had remembered who he was and chosen who he wanted to become. "It looks like not being afraid anymore," she said. "It looks like Lily having someone who listens to her the way you do. It looks like me having a partner instead of just surviving on my own. So we're doing this, all of us together. All of us together." 6 months later, then David Chen stood in his new office at Mount Sinai, looking at the framed drawing on his desk. It showed three figures, a tall one, a medium one, and a small one, standing in front of a purple elephant. At the bottom, in careful 8-year-old handwriting, it said, "Our family of choice." His morning had been full of patience, people working through divorces, custody battles, trauma recovery. The same work he'd done before, but with a deeper understanding of what it meant to lose everything and find your way back. His phone buzzed with a text from Sophia. "Dinner at 7, Lily wants to show you her new painting." He typed back, "Wouldn't miss it. Love you both." As he prepared for his next patient, David reflected on the strange journey that had brought him here. He'd lost his memory and found his purpose. He'd lost his identity and found his family. He'd lost 2 years of his life and gained a lifetime of knowing what really mattered. Some stories he'd learned don't end where you think they will. Sometimes they end where they're supposed to begin. Outside his office window, the city hummed with its eternal energy. Somewhere in those tunnels beneath the streets, other lost souls were looking for their way home. And thanks to a little girl who believed in purple elephants and families that stick together, David Chen knew exactly where home was. It wasn't a place you returned to. It was the people you chose to love and who chose to love you back every single day. 3 years later, the Times Square subway platform looked exactly the same as it had on that morning 3 years ago, when David Chen had folded his cardboard mattress for the last time. But now he stood there in a well-tailored suit carrying a briefcase, waiting for a very different kind of train. Next to him, Lily Martinez Chen, officially adopted 6 months ago, bounced on her toes with barely contained excitement. At 11 years old, she had her mother's intelligence and her father's gentle wisdom, plus an artistic talent that had already earned her recognition in several young artists' competitions. "Are you sure she'll be there?" Lily asked for the third time. "She'll be there," David assured her. "Mrs. Patterson is very reliable." Sophia appeared at the top of the stairs, moving with the confident stride of someone who had recently been promoted to senior partner at her law firm. Her work now focused exclusively on family law and children's advocacy, a calling she'd discovered thanks to her own experiences with the system. "Sorry I'm late," she said, joining them on the platform. The Chen Foundation meeting ran over. The Chen Foundation was David's latest project, a nonprofit organization that provided free mental health services to homeless individuals and families in crisis. It was funded partly by the settlement money from the lawsuit against Blackstone Consulting and partly by donations from grateful former patients. "Dr. Martinez sends his regards," Sophia continued. "He wanted you to know that the new crisis intervention program is exceeding all expectations." Dr. James Martinez had become more than a colleague. He was now the co-director of the foundation and one of David's closest friends. The note that David had written to him 3 years ago was framed on the wall of the foundation's headquarters with a plaque that read, "Sometimes healing begins with a stranger's kindness." The train arrived and they settled into seats near the window. As the subway car pulled away from Times Square, David felt a familiar tug of memory, not the painful fragments that had tormented him for 2 years, but the warm recollection of where his new life had truly begun. "Dad," Lily said, using the title that still made David's heart skip a beat. "Yes, sweetheart? Do you ever miss it, being somebody different?" David considered the question seriously. Lily deserved honest answers to her thoughtful questions. "Sometimes I miss the simplicity," he said. "When I was living in the subway, my biggest worry was finding enough food for the day. Now I worry about budgets and patient care and whether I'm being a good husband and father." "But do you miss it really?" "No," David said firmly, "because the person I was then was only half alive. I was surviving, but I wasn't living. Now I'm living." Sophia reached over and took his hand. "We all are." The train pulled into their station, 86th and Lexington, and they made their way up to street level. The autumn air was crisp, carrying the promise of winter, and the sidewalks bustled with the familiar energy of New York on a Saturday afternoon. They walked 3 blocks to a small community center where a banner hung over the entrance. "Annual Thanksgiving Celebration. Everyone welcome." Inside, the main room had been transformed into a dining hall with long tables covered in white tablecloths and decorated with centerpieces made by local schoolchildren. The smell of turkey and stuffing filled the air, along with the sound of laughter and conversation. Dr. Chen, a woman in her 60s, approached them with a warm smile. This was Mrs. Patterson, the director of the center and the organizer of the annual meal for anyone who needed a place to spend Thanksgiving. "Mrs. Patterson, thank you for including us," David said, shaking her hand. "Thank you for volunteering. We have over 200 people signed up this year." David, Sophia, and Lily spent the next 4 hours serving food clearing tables and talking with the guests. Some were homeless individuals who reminded David of his own time on the streets. Others were elderly people with no family nearby. Still others were families going through temporary hardships, grateful for a warm meal and a welcoming community. As the afternoon wound down, David found himself in conversation with a young man who looked to be in his 20s. Clean-cut, well-spoken, but with the hollow look in his eyes that David recognized immediately. "I'm Marcus," the young man said. "I've been staying at the shelter for a few weeks now. Lost my doll, then my apartment. It's been difficult." "I'm David, and I understand more than you might think. Mrs. Patterson said you used to be homeless. For about 2 years, right here in the city." Marcus looked surprised. "You seem so together now. How did you get back on your feet?" David smiled, glancing across the room at Sophia and Lily, who were packing leftover food for guests to take home. "I learned that sometimes losing everything is the first step to finding what really matters. And I learned that families aren't just the people you're born to. They're the people who choose to stand by you when you need them most." That sounds nice in theory, but practically speaking, how do you rebuild when you have nothing? One day at a time, one kind gesture at a time, one choice at a time. David pulled out his wallet and extracted a business card. "This is for a program I run. We provide counseling, job training, temporary housing assistance. If you're interested, give us a call." Marcus studied the card Dr. David Chen director, the Chen Foundation, Healing Through Connection. You're a doctor. I am, but more importantly, I'm someone who understands what you're going through. And I'm here to tell you that your story doesn't end here. This is just a chapter. As they were preparing to leave, Mrs. Patterson pulled David aside. Dr. Chen, I wanted you to know, Marcus isn't the first person you've helped here today. I've watched you with our guests, and you have a gift for seeing people, really seeing them. We all need to be seen, David replied. Sometimes that's the first step to healing. Walking home through Central Park as the sun set over the city, the Chen family moved with the easy rhythm of people who belong together. Lily walked between her parents, occasionally breaking away to examine interesting leaves or to pet dogs they passed on the path. I'm proud of you today, Sophia said to David as they paused by the reservoir. For what? For being exactly who you are. Not the doctor you used to be, not the homeless man you were for a while, but this version of you. The one who can connect with anyone who sees the best in people, who builds bridges. David was quiet for a moment, watching the city lights begin to twinkle in the gathering darkness. Do you know what I'm most grateful for? He finally said. What's that? That I forgot who I was supposed to be so I could discover who I actually am. Lily, who had been listening with the serious attention she gave to all important conversations, looked up at both her parents. I think purple elephants know that, she said solemnly. They remember everything that matters and forget everything that doesn't. As they continued their walk home, David Chen reflected on the miracle of his life. He'd started as a successful but isolated psychiatrist, become a forgotten man living in subway tunnels, and ended up as a husband, father, and healer whose mission was to help others find their way home. The city hummed around them with its eternal energy, millions of stories unfolding simultaneously, each person carrying their own hopes and fears and dreams. But David no longer felt lost in that vastness. He knew exactly where he belonged. He belonged with the woman walking beside him who had taught him that love was something you chose every day. He belonged with the little girl who had shown him that families could be created by choice as powerfully as by birth. He belonged in the work of healing, of helping other lost souls find their way back to themselves. Some stories David had learned were about returning to where you started. But the best stories were about discovering that home was never a place at all. Home was the people who saw you at your worst and chose to love you anyway. Home was the work that fed your soul as well as your body. Home was the quiet moments and the grand gestures, the ordinary Tuesday evenings and the extraordinary adventures. Home was choosing every single day to show up for the life you'd built rather than the life you'd lost. As they turned onto their street, David Chen smiled at the warm glow of light in their apartment windows. Somewhere in those rooms were photo albums full of memories they'd made together, art supplies for Lily's endless creative projects, and the comfortable mess of a family that had found each other against all odds. Tomorrow he would go to his office and help other people piece together their broken stories. Sophia would advocate for children who needed someone to fight for them. Lily would paint purple elephants and ask profound questions about the nature of love and memory. And every evening they would come home to each other. It was, David thought as he climbed the stairs to their apartment, exactly the life he would have chosen if he'd been brave enough to imagine it. But sometimes he'd learned the best things in life were the ones you never saw coming. Sometimes losing everything was the only way to find everything that mattered. And sometimes the most beautiful stories began with the words, I don't remember who I used to be, but I know exactly who I want to become. The end. Fimut. If you enjoyed David's story of second chances and finding family in unexpected places, please give this video a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had a moment that completely changed your perspective on someone? Have you experienced the power of chosen family? Let me know. I love hearing your stories. And don't forget to subscribe for more inspiring tales of resilience, love, and the extraordinary power of human connection.